There is a muscle in your leg right now that most people will go their entire lives without ever activating correctly. It does not show up in the mirror. You cannot feel it working on its own. But when it switches on, it does something that no supplement, no diet trick, and no expensive wellness routine can replicate. It pulls sugar directly out of your blood without your pancreas doing a single thing. And the movement that activates it can be done sitting down, at your desk, on your couch, anywhere, right now. By the end of this video, you are going to understand exactly what is happening inside your body every time you eat, why you feel foggy and exhausted an hour after lunch, why that craving for something sweet in the afternoon is not a willpower problem, and what to do about all of it with almost no effort. Stay with me because the science here is genuinely surprising. Let's start with glucose because everything begins here. Glucose is the simplest form of sugar, and it is not the enemy. That point matters more than most people realize. Glucose is fuel. Every single cell in your body runs on it. Your muscles burn it, your liver stores it, and your brain, this is the critical part, depends on it almost entirely. Cut glucose off from your brain for just a few minutes, and your thinking goes blurry, your mood drops, and your body starts sending out emergency signals. So glucose itself is not the villain in this story. Glucose is essential. The problem, the real problem, is what happens when too much of it floods your bloodstream all at once and your body has nowhere useful to send it. When you eat carbohydrates, bread, rice, pasta, potatoes, fruit, anything starchy or sweet, your digestive system breaks all of it down into glucose. That glucose enters your bloodstream. This is completely normal. This is exactly what is supposed to happen. But the speed at which it enters and the volume, that is where things start to go wrong for millions of people every single day. Picture a garden hose with the tap turned on gently. Water flows through smoothly. The hose holds its shape. Now imagine someone cranks that tap as wide open as it will go. The water pressure surges. The hose strains and bulges. That is essentially what your blood vessels deal with during a sharp blood sugar spike. Your body detects this surge almost immediately and sends a very urgent message to your pancreas, a small organ sitting just behind your stomach. The message is simple. Release insulin and release it now. Insulin is a hormone. Think of it as a delivery driver whose entire job is to grab glucose out of your bloodstream and shuttle it into cells where it can actually be used. Some of that glucose goes to your muscles. Some goes to your liver, where it gets stored as glycogen, which is your body's emergency fuel reserve. Under normal circumstances, this system works beautifully. Glucose comes in, insulin delivers it, everything balances out. But here is where the problem starts. If your muscles are already fully topped up and your liver is already packed with glycogen and you are sitting completely still after dinner, your body still has to deal with the excess glucose. It does not disappear. It does not get discarded. Your body converts it and tucks it away into your fat cells. And once it goes in there, it is extremely difficult to get it back out. Meanwhile, the insulin that was working so hard to clear all that glucose from your blood has done its job almost too efficiently. It has pulled so much glucose out of circulation that your blood sugar drops, sometimes lower than it was before you even sat down to eat. This is the crash. This is the moment that derails millions of people every single afternoon, and almost nobody understands what is actually causing it. When your blood sugar drops that fast, your brain, which is running almost entirely on glucose, goes into a kind of low fuel panic. It sends out an alarm signal. Energy is dropping. Fix this immediately. A wave of tiredness hits you. Your thoughts get slow and sticky. Your head feels foggy. Your eyelids get heavy. And then comes that very specific, almost desperate craving for something sweet. A chocolate bar, a handful of biscuits, something from the vending machine at the end of the hall. And here is the thing that most people get wrong about this moment. They think it is a character flaw. They think they lack discipline. They blame themselves. But none of that is true. Your brain is doing exactly what it was designed to do. It is protecting itself from running out of fuel by demanding more. The chemistry is the driver, not your choices. So sugar goes up fast, then it comes crashing down fast. And now your brain is in energy conservation mode, deliberately slowing down everything that feels non-essential so it can protect the basic functions that keep you alive. That sluggish, foggy, half-asleep feeling you get in the early afternoon is not laziness. It is your body managing a fuel crisis that repeats itself day after day, meal after meal, in most people who are eating a typical modern diet. And here is the part that should concern you most. Every single one of those spikes and crashes costs your body something. Every sharp glucose spike triggers a large insulin release. Over years, that repeated demand on your pancreas begins to wear it down. The pancreas is not an infinite resource. It has a working life, and pushing it hard day after day gradually reduces its reserve capacity. On top of that, your cells begin to adapt to the constant flood of insulin by becoming less responsive to it. This is called insulin resistance. In simple terms, insulin is the key. The cell door is the lock. But the lock starts to jam. So to force the same amount of glucose into the cell, your pancreas has to produce even more insulin. More insulin to do the same job, more and more each year, working harder and harder for less and less return. The deeply frustrating part of insulin resistance is that for a long time, it is invisible on paper. Your routine blood work can look completely fine. Your doctor sees nothing alarming, but you feel it. The fatigue is real. The stubborn belly fat is real. The cravings that will not let up are real. The feeling that something is subtly off, but nothing is officially wrong. That gap is exactly where millions of people spend years before a diagnosis eventually arrives. And the diagnosis, when it does come, follows a well-worn path. Insulin resistance leads to prediabetes. Prediabetes leads to type 2 diabetes. And type 2 diabetes opens the door to damage to your blood vessels, your vision, your kidneys, and your nerves. This is not a hypothetical. This is the most common chronic disease progression happening in countries all over the world right now. But here is the genuinely good news. While your numbers are still in a normal range, all of this can be slowed, stopped, and in many cases completely reversed. And the most powerful tool available to you is not a medication. It is not a supplement. It is not a complicated elimination diet. It is your own muscle tissue. And once you understand how muscle controls blood sugar, the afternoon crash, the cravings, the fatigue, all of it starts to make complete sense. Inside every muscle cell are tiny structures called mitochondria. You do not need to memorize that word. What you need to understand is what they do. They function like small furnaces. They take glucose from your bloodstream, burn it, and convert it into energy for movement and heat. When you are sitting completely still, those furnaces are running on the lowest possible setting. They barely need any fuel. But the moment a muscle starts to contract, those furnaces flare up. They start pulling glucose out of your blood at a dramatically higher rate. And here is the part that changes everything. Normally, glucose needs insulin to enter a cell. Insulin acts as the key that unlocks the door. No key, no entry. But a contracting muscle has its own separate door, a back entrance that opens independently with no key required. The moment a muscle starts working, it opens that second pathway and glucose flows directly from your bloodstream into the muscle cell. Your pancreas does not need to get involved. Your insulin levels stay calm. The spike never builds to the height it would otherwise reach. The crash that follows is far smaller. The roller coaster never gets going. This is why the 90 minutes after you eat are the most metabolically valuable window in your entire day. That is when glucose is actively rising in your bloodstream. That is the exact window when working muscles can intercept it directly, pull it in through that back door, and burn it as fuel before it ever has a chance to get stored as fat or force your pancreas to fire off a large insulin response. Every minute of gentle movement during that window is doing something measurable inside your blood. So which muscle does this job better than any other? This is where the hidden muscle comes back into the picture. On the back of your lower leg, just below the knee, there are two muscles stacked on top of each other. The outer one, the one you can see as the bulge in your calf, is the gastrocnemius. That is the one that engages when you go up on your toes. But underneath it, deeper in the leg, hidden completely from view, is a second muscle called the soleus. Most people have never heard of it. You cannot see it. You cannot really isolate the feeling of it on its own. And yet, when it comes to clearing glucose from your blood, nothing in your body matches it, pound for pound. Researchers at the University of Houston ran a study on exactly this. It was published in a peer-reviewed journal in 2022. They had participants sit in a chair and perform one very simple movement after eating. They lifted and lowered their heels while keeping their toes flat on the floor. That is it. No standing up, no changing position, no equipment, just a slow, repeated heel raise while seated. The results were striking enough to get significant attention in the research community. The after-meal blood sugar spike dropped by approximately 52%. Insulin release dropped by close to 60%. That second number is the one that matters most. It means the pancreas barely had to respond at all. The soleus was absorbing glucose from the bloodstream so efficiently that a major insulin release simply was not necessary. You can try this right now while you are watching. Plant both feet flat on the floor. Keep your toes pressed down. Slowly lift your heels up and let them back down. Up and down. Slow and easy. No force required. You can do this at a desk during a work call. You can do it on the couch after dinner. You can do it in a waiting room, in a car, at a kitchen table. Nobody around you will notice anything. 10 to 15 minutes of this after a meal is enough to produce a real, measurable difference in your blood sugar response. Now, the soleus is the most efficient single tool you have, but it is not the only one. The more muscle groups you activate after eating, the more glucose leaves your bloodstream and the faster it goes. There are several other options that fit into a completely normal day without any disruption to your routine. The first is a walk after eating. Studies comparing people who sat quietly after a meal versus people who took a 10-minute walk at an easy pace found that the walking group experienced roughly half the blood sugar peak of the sitting group. Not an hour on the treadmill, not intervals, not a dedicated workout. 10 minutes at a relaxed pace. You can go outside. You can walk laps around your living room. You can walk up and down the stairs in your building a few times. The direction does not matter. The speed does not matter very much. Moving your legs, that is the variable that counts. The second option is squats, and they work even faster than walking for a simple reason. Squats recruit the largest muscles in your entire body, your quadriceps and your glutes. More muscle activated means more glucose being pulled out per minute. The technique is straightforward. Stand with your feet roughly shoulder width apart, toes turned slightly outward. Lower yourself down as far as feels comfortable, keeping your back straight and letting your knees track in the same direction as your toes. Then push back up, 10 slow, controlled repetitions. Anchor this to something you already do, like waiting for a kettle to boil, and you will find it takes almost no additional mental effort to build it into your day. The third option is one that most people completely overlook, and it may be the most practical of all: housework. Specifically, housework done immediately after eating. The problem is not the activity itself, it is the timing. Most people clean up before dinner or wait an hour after eating before doing anything. But 15 minutes of light cleaning right after a meal, washing dishes, wiping counters, sweeping the floor, putting things away, produces a glucose response roughly equivalent to a 10-minute walk. You were already going to do it. You just needed to do it at the right time. What all four of these tools share is that none of them require you to rearrange your life. You do not need to wake up earlier. You do not need a gym membership or workout clothes or any equipment at all. You simply stop being completely still for 10 to 15 minutes after you eat. Or if you really want to stay seated, you sit and move your heels. That is the entire intervention. There is one more factor worth understanding, especially if you are over 40. After the age of 40, muscle mass naturally begins to decline if you do not actively work to maintain it. The medical term for this is sarcopenia, and it matters for blood sugar because less muscle means a smaller system for disposing of glucose. A smaller disposal system means more pressure on your pancreas to handle the excess with insulin. More pressure on the pancreas means the blood sugar roller coaster gets more extreme with age, not because you are doing anything differently, but because your disposal capacity has quietly shrunk. This is one of the most underappreciated reasons why metabolic health tends to decline after midlife, and it is also one of the most correctable because muscle responds to use at any age. If you start moving after meals, the short-term changes come quickly. Within a few days, that afternoon, fog begins to lift. Your head feels clearer after lunch. Your energy stops dropping off a cliff an hour after eating. That urgent, pulling craving for something sweet in the mid-afternoon starts to lose its grip. These are not small quality of life improvements. For a lot of people, eliminating that daily energy crash changes the entire feel of their afternoon, their productivity, their mood, and how wrung out they feel by evening. In the long term, something even more significant is happening. Every time your muscles clear glucose directly, your pancreas gets a genuine break, not a small one. Based on the Houston study numbers, potentially a 60% reduction in how hard it has to work after a meal. Over days, weeks, months, and years, those breaks accumulate. Your cells gradually become more sensitive to insulin again. Your muscles become more efficient at absorbing glucose. Your entire metabolic system shifts toward a healthier baseline. That is the difference between staying metabolically healthy well into your 60s and 70s versus slowly drifting toward insulin resistance, prediabetes, and eventually type 2 diabetes. Here is what is actually worth doing starting today. Pay attention to what you do in the 15 to 20 minutes right after you finish eating. Try the seated heel raises at least once this week and notice how you feel in the hour that follows. At your next appointment, ask your doctor about your fasting glucose number and, if it makes sense, about hemoglobin A1C, which measures your average blood sugar over the previous 3 months. If you are already taking medications or supplements for blood sugar management, keep having those conversations with your provider, not with a video. Everything in this video is grounded in published research, but your health picture is individual, and the people who know your full history are the right ones to guide your decisions. The muscle was always there. The back door was always open. You just needed to know it existed.